Heller, very well-known, famous Hungarian philosopher, and in the invitation that I sent you, you know a lot of information about her. Just let me say a few words that she is also related to Veszprém one way or the other. Her great-grandparents were from Veszprém, and she is also related to Ausztráliától, the very famous violinist from Veszprém as well. And just one small remark that I would like to make, and I'm very happy that we have a lot of people from the Balaton Dual Language School, because as most of you might know, this event was supposed to be organized down there at the school, which would have been, in my opinion, would have received a much more, come on in, a lot more people. And however, due to some unforeseen circumstances, the presentation, the lecture was not allowed on the premises of the Dual Language School of Balaton, so I'm very grateful to the director of the Eötvös Károly Library that she allowed us to organize this event here.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome to this very short encounter. I'm going to talk about ethics for a half an hour,
Yes.
and then it will come to the discussion and everyone can participate. It's easy for me to talk about ethics in an English-speaking class. In the afternoon, there will be more embarrassment because I have an Hungarian title, Etika és örök. But in English, I have no such a problem because ethics means both. I am now speaking about ethics, in fact, as örök. That is the way in which you behave, the so-called moral content of your acts and of your way of argumentation and your relationship. So when you speak about ethics in English, you have differentiate rather between ethics, morals and morality, because these three terms have different meaning, cover different kind of activities. When you speak about ethics, you can speak about, I said once, about the science of ethics, and on the other hand of human behavior, human action, and the so-called ethical content, I come back to it, of these human actions. When you speak about morals, then you basically speak about the norms and rules and habits and attitudes of a given society. So you say, what are the morals here in Hungary? Then you speak about what people believe to be right or wrong here and now, and how they behave, whether they behave on the same way which they think they should behave. This is what we call morals. When Nietzsche wrote a book about genealogy of morals, he wrote a book that he spoke about everything. He spoke about ethical customs, he spoke about the development of conscience, he was speaking about the ethical views, moral views of a society, so about everything. Morals in general covers all norms and rules and behavioral patterns of a world. Morality, however, means something else. Morality, it relates to the individual and not to society. Morality is the individual's relationship to these norms and rules of the society. You as an individual, all of you are individual, single person, you can have a relationship to the norms and rules of your world. You can accept them, you can criticize them, sometimes you reject them, you can say this is a right norm but I would rather have another one, so you can be critical about norms and rules themselves. This is morality. When you speak about ethics in the sense of morals in general, then you speak about a kind of moral authority. The authority is the regard of the other. And when the regard of the other, of your fellows, if you look at you and the regard tells you that you are in the wrong, then normally you are ashamed, you blush, you want to sink into the earth. This is what we call you are in the state of shame. You shame yourself. You shame yourself if you are confronted with the disapproving regard of your community, under condition that you accept the norms and rules of your community. If you accept the norms and rules of community as absolutely valid for you as well, then you will be ashamed if the regard shows you have did something which was not permitted by your community, which was not adequate to the norms and rules of the community. Then you are ashamed. You can say that shame is a moral authority, or rather that the regard of the others of the community is the moral authority, the single moral authority, to subject yourself to this moral authority. But when I speak about morality in the relationship, these norms and rules, then I speak about something else, because it's a kind of internal voice which tells you what is right and wrong. This internal voice is called conscience. If you speak about norms, there are different ways of application. You can apply a norm in different ways. You have to consider the situation in which norm applies. You have to consider with whom you have to deal, what kind of concrete problem you have to deal with. Who is the person against or for whom you apply this norm. That is a way to distinguish between different kinds of applications of this norm, different from the rules. That's an ancient wisdom. It was first formulated by Aristotle. You know Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics, which you perhaps know. And he said that if you apply a norm, then you have to find the middle measure between two extremes, and you have to act in a way as you should act in this time, under this occasion, because this person acts and so forth. This distinction between abstract norms and concrete norms is the first case in which the individual's relationship to the norms of the society gains momentum, gains importance. Important how you judge a situation. You can misjudge a situation and you can act wrongly even if your knowledge about the norms are correct, they are right. You cannot think otherwise about a norm which is accepted by you as all the others, but you can think about the application of this norm differently in different kinds of situations. Now this distinction between norms and rules, this distinction between abstract and concrete norms was the condition of the appearance of the voice of conscience. Now without this there is no voice of conscience, there is only the regard of your community. But when the first step was taken to distinguish between abstract and concrete norms, and Euphronius, your mental capacity to decide what is right and what is wrong, Socrates was the first who formulated what conscience might become or might be when he contrasted to the norms and rules of his community the internal voice, daimonion, he calls it his personal daimonion, his personal internal voice, which speaks to him and tells him sometimes, but not to do, never tells him what to do, but tells him what he should not do, and make you know that Apology of Socrates, everyone knows the Apology of Socrates. In his book, he refers to his daimonion, that but the daimonion did not tell him not to do this and that, then he did this and that because he is not forbidden by his internal voice. We'll understand this very easily when I refer to the so-called virtue norms. You know, the virtue norms are different from other norms. There are other norms. For example, you should behave decently. Decently, for example, in the schoolroom. This is a concrete norm. You should behave decently. It's an abstract norm. Because when you should behave decently, this norm, decent behavior, can be applied to any concrete situations. When you say you behave decently in the schoolroom, that's a concrete norm. When you behave decently in the cinema, that's another concrete norm. You behave decently in friendship or in love, or this is another concretization of the same norm. Or there is an abstract to be courageous. Yeah, be courageous. Courage is a virtue is a virtue norm, but you can be courageous in different ways. Nowadays, for example, we speak about civic courage. Civic courage means that even you tell your opinion freely, even if you know that this opinion is disapproved in your society, even among your fellows, not just about from the people high up, but also you fellows disapprove of this. For example, you can practice civic courage in a schoolroom as well. It's courage not just say no to your teacher, but say no to your fellow students as well. If you believe that what you believe to be right is indeed right, that is, you need to have support, a kind of conviction. Conscience is related to conviction. The conviction that the way I understand this norm in this complex situation is the right understanding of this norm. I had this interpretation of norm for true. You do not need to say this is the truth. Only a few people in few conditions say this is the truth, but when you act according to your own conscience, then you act according to a kind of knowledge or interpretation which you believe to be true. You have a faith in this thing is true, this conviction is true. You can be convinced by others that you are wrong, but as long as you are convinced, and this conviction should not be related to your interest. Morality is the internal voice. Internal voice. You can reject on the ground of morality the norms and rules, the requirements of your world, of your environment. But you cannot be absolutely sure that what you believe to be right is indeed right. That it must come to a kind of conversation between the norms and rules of your world and your internal conscience. And in this conversation, conscience has the last word in the modern times, but it does not mean that's the only authority of human behavior. There can be two authorities of human behavior which are in a conversation with each other. Now, how big a role rationality really plays in our ethical behavior? That if you ask the question whether I do act rightly or wrongly, what is the role of rationality, a rational argument? Can one persuade anyone by rational arguments that what he is doing or she is doing, or rather wrong than right, or rather right than wrong? If a child tortures a cat, then I tell the child, don't torture the cat. And the child is asked, why not? And the parent will answer, because it hurts the cat. The child, why shouldn't I hurt the cat? Then the parent says, because you do not feel well if you are hurt. The child says, okay, I don't feel right when I'm hurt, but why shouldn't I hurt the cat? And there is an end of the argument, goes on forever. At the end, I get Pascal. Pascal said, it's the logic of the heart, which should take over from the logic of the mind. If there is logic, you don't come to the feeling that you feel it is wrong to hurt the cat. That is the feeling of empathy. It's a natural feeling of empathy. If your natural feeling of empathy is not touched by this argument, you will continue to hurt the cat. So there are two logics in ethics. That is logic, which is you can persuade it that what is you are doing is wrong. And there is another kind of logic, the logic of the heart. It's not identical with conscience, but it can play a part in voicing conscience. That is a kind of natural empathy. Natural empathy, you don't like to see a person crying. You do not like to see a person suffering. You cannot start Etika on the ground of these norms and rules, because they're changing. And if you continue to do this, then at the end you will end up in a kind of moral relativism, They like their way of life, we like our way of life, the third lives not their way of life. For one is good to burn the wife when the man is dead, that's the old Indian custom, and the other for others it's good to rape their women because that's the custom, and for us it is wrong, but they have their tradition, we have our own tradition, there is an old Christian tradition which blames homosexuality as immoral. Now we have a modern code of behavior, we don't think that it is immoral. So norms are changing, and this is why we cannot really rely upon norms and rules with the exception of certain abstract norms. And there are abstract norms to be a decent person. It's an abstract norm. Do not hurt another person on purpose. It's an abstract norm, and so on and so on. These are still valid. They are still valid, but in a way they are limited by the modern concept of autonomy. That we have to respect the autonomy of the other person. We are not supposed to superimpose our convictions on another person. That is, the respect for the autonomy of the other person became very important in the modern world and restricts the relevance of certain traditional norms and rules as well. So that is modern Etika is in trouble, because they either end up in relativism or they end up in fundamentalism. Fundamentalism means nothing else in this sphere as the identification of concrete norms with abstract norms. They are only concrete norms, then you are a fundamentalist because you do not make a distinction between abstract and concrete norms. Concrete norms become the criteria of you being decent or undecent. So what can Etika do? What is the starting point of Etika, of ethics in this sense? The starting point, as I told you, cannot be norms and rules because they are historically changing and end up with kind of relativism. That's their form of, that's our form of life. It's good for them and something else is good for us. Why not? This will not work. The other position is to make a new starting point. Start with the good person. That is what? The good person. Start with the person who is good. Not with norms, not with rules, but with the person who is good. His starting point was already made by Immanuel Kant. He said that the goodwill that shines like a jewel, yeah? You immediately recognize a person with goodwill because every good he says is relative, only the goodwill is absolute. His ethics becomes formal. And the precondition is what we call metaphysics, that this ethics, as he worked it out, it can be relevant only if you accept that every person of us, we are two persons, and the two persons are not connected with each other. One person is your nature, the other person is freedom. That is freedom. Freedom can determine nature, nature cannot determine freedom.
Empathy and shame. We heard that it is an individual thing and you cannot feel another person's suffering, except in literature or special situations. But I think it is a general experience everyone has that we feel vicarious shame. We feel shame for things that other people do. It has an emotional consequence. Shame is emotional. And if there is an emotional individual consequence of something that is being done, somewhere else, we haven't heard much about responsibility, but is there any sense of responsibility for emotional suffering that individuals experience through no action of themselves? Could we talk about collective responsibility? Because authority is power. It is power to influence other people's decisions by norms, by shame, by indirect methods, all sorts of things. So there must be some sort of responsibility associated with power, because what else would our civic courage, mean? So sure if this is becoming a real question. Just
I suppose for both questions I could answer with a new lecture, because they're very complicated. But anyway, I think they're very, very important, very interesting. You spoke first about shame. Now when we speak about shame, we have to speak about affects. What are affects? Affects are instinct remnants in which we are born. They are innate. Among them there is shame, the only directly social inborn affect. But there is also fear, there is also disgust, there is also joy and sorrow, there is also eroticism. These are all affects which are basically present in every healthy individual of the human species. That's why they are innate. Darwin made some kind of empirical research during his trips, and he came to the conclusion that this is empirical universal, that in all people on the earth, you can identify exactly the same effects, and these are instinct remnants. When we became out from animal kingdom to human kingdom, instinct remnants which are basically there, and they are all motivational forces, they are motivational forces. However, and I come to your question, they are reactive. And this reactive, something has to trigger, and there must be a trigger stimulus. And the trigger stimuli are always changing. That we are no more afraid of the lion. Well, forbid. That was a trigger stimuli. We are afraid of, for example, for failing in our examination. Yeah? For 500 to 1,000 years, people are not afraid of failing in examination. They are afraid of something else. They were afraid to walk on the neighborhood street because there could be knife. We are not afraid of this. We are afraid of the law, perhaps. So we are afraid of different things, and we are ashamed from different things. Because it depends on the trigger stimuli about what we should be ashamed, and about what we should be happy or we be sorrow. How you know the sorrow, and we know about every person in the human species. We recognize these two pictures. Everyone, all of them. That was Darwin's sociological examination. That is sorrow. So joy and sorrow. That's also affect. But why are you smiling? Why are you in the state of joy? Can be entirely different kind of trigger stimuli to do it. So this has no direct relationship to empathy, only in one way. That is a kind of, because the innate character of empathy, which is not shown to be true. It was Rousseau's conception, and it was also, Rousseau of course learned it from Pascal. There is a kind of logic of the heart, an innate effect of sympathy, but it is not empirically proven. You can think it over. Maybe it is there, maybe it is not there. I remind you on the famous talk of Himmler to the SS. Himmler talk of SS will appear. Perhaps you know it. When he said to the people of the SS, you have to forget your innate feeling of empathy, because you ought to kill. He presumed that we have an innate capacity of empathy. We should suppress this innate capacity, because we should not allow it to be active, to be motivational. So not everyone has this innate capacity, I think, but everyone can be afraid, or can be ashamed, or can have joy and sorrow. So I think the affects are more universal human. Second question about responsibility. There are two kinds of responsibilities, a retrospective and a prospective responsibility. What is a retrospective responsibility? I did something, and when I did something, I'm responsible for my deed. That is retrospective. It's very difficult for a child to learn this kind of responsibility. When a child breaks something, he says, it was the glass, it was not me. That is, to first to understand, I am the cause. And this is the effect of my deed. This is the first stage in which you can speak about retrospective responsibility. To carry responsibility, very difficult. Most people do not carry responsibility for the trade. There was someone else. I obeyed an order. That was not me, that's my friends who suggested me. Go to the courtroom. Very few people on the courtroom. They say, I'm responsible for this and that. They will always say the others did it, the others persuaded, and so on and so forth. It is very rare, but it's a great, in a way, it is a merit if you take responsibility for your deeds. It is a merit. Prospective responsibility is something else. Thus, I take up a situation as a situation of power, situation of authority, and I take it up. I will from this moment on be responsible for the things I am in charge of. The captain of the ship is responsible for the passengers of the ship. They are the last, in the case of catastrophe, to leave the ship. They said, I am responsible for all passengers. As teacher who goes on excursion with the school is responsible for the well-being and the health of the children whose teacher she is. This is a different kind of responsibility. And in politics, if you take up a political position, you are responsible for what happens in this country. You must take responsibility because you took up freely, that is, on your own will, this authority. Then these are two different kinds of responsibilities. Both are very important. I don't know which one was in your mind, but try to answer briefly on your question.
Britain, as you might know, is a very liberal nation, and I think the morality of the nation is changing. Is there a danger that what is popular, what is fashionable, morality-wise, becomes what is acceptable? So, yeah, I'll give you an example. So, I'm a Christian, and there was a case a year ago or so, I think, there was a British Airways employee, you may have heard of this, who wore a cross around her neck because she's a Christian and because that's what she chose to do. And she was told to take it off because it was offensive to other people. So this often happens for Christians in the UK, that things that are normal for them and don't cause any problems to anyone else are not allowed because of morality, morality or moral ethics problems. But on the other side, what a Muslim could do, or what another religious group or another group could do, who are what is thought the minority, what they do is okay. So no one would criticise what a Muslim does, how a Muslim dresses in the UK, but what a Christian does gets heavily criticised. Is there a danger that what is popular, I can say that, what is popular, what is innovative, what is new to the culture, becomes what's morally acceptable?
That was a very interesting report, and I call it a report. It's very different in the United States when you can wear everything what you want. No one will criticize you because of this. But obviously this is a kind of change. Change in Britain in the morals, not in morality. Morals, it's a change in Britain. And I think there will change also in the case of fair play, but another matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.